From the center of the galaxy, this is ForceCenter, a show about Star Wars, pop culture, and the ultimate adventure, life itself. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Ken Napzok.
And I'm Jennifer Landa.
And this is one of our Cues of the Force episode. You have provided cues. We will attempt to provide A's. Our first A is, hey, Audible. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for free from your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. This week we are recommending Rebel Rising by Beth Revis. That is one of our favorite books around here, and a great connection into not only Rogue One, but hey, all of the excitement about Andor Season 2 coming soon to our large at home, probably small screens. Anyway, to download your, once again, free audiobook, you can go to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Again, that's audibletrial.com/ForceCenter for your free audiobook. I just decided to emphasize a different word in all of our readings of this, Ken. I never realized how many times the word free is actually in the copy we're supposed to read.
I was going to say, it's good copy. It's good copy.
Good copy.
Free.
It's
free.
real good copy. And the point is, it is free, but it really helps us out a lot. So if you're interested in checking out a book, it really does help us a ton. So thank you for everybody who's done that over the years. That is Audible, which means we get to move on to our next A, which is Asks. Ken?
That's right. And we're asking you to check out Patreon at patreon.com/ForceCenter. Surely one of the best ways to support your independent creators, and we consider ourselves in that category. And our goal over there right now is to get to 415 paid patrons. And once we hit that number, we are going to do a Patreon-only live stream. It's going to be for you, exclusive Q&As, hanging out. Who knows? Maybe have some hot chocolate, some spiked hot chocolate. Who knows what we'll do? Be crazy. And we're gonna do that once we hit that mark. Sometimes the mark kind of moves up and down, and we kind of want to make sure we're over it. Once we hit it, we cross that finish line, score that touchdown. We'll be doing that Patreon-only live stream. Go to patreon.com/ForceCenter to support us there if you'd like. There's our ask.
Yeah, there we go. So we got the asks, we got the Audible. The only thing left is the cues. We have two great questions from our patrons on Patreon. The first one comes to us from, hey, another A, Addie Clark. Addie says, greetings, ForceCenter crew. I'm here with a sort of silly, but always tangentially Padme-related question. Before Rise of Skywalker came out, I was talking to a former colleague about my Reylo love, but my conviction that Ben was going to have to die, because there's no coming back to the world and repenting for what he'd been a part of. And in this conversation, my colleague couldn't believe I was a Reylo shipper, and how could I possibly support a mass murderer? In my defense, which is what I'd like to hear your opinion on, was this. At its core, Star Wars is a story about women who are convinced they can change their man. Hear me out. Rey and Ben, Leia and Han, Padme and Anakin. Once I had this thought, I haven't been able to unsee it, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on my silly one. Thank you for making my commutes more bearable. Thank you, Addie, for the interesting question. I do, in my opinion, think it's both silly, deeply complicated, and terribly sensitive at the same time. So we will.
It's all those.
We're gonna try to have so much respectful, responsible fun addressing this question, because I do think it is fun, but it does, I think, tap into. The entire shipping conversation is important. The entire redemption in Star Wars conversation is important. And you tied those two important questions together with a bow, Addie. It will bring us all back to Padme, which is beautiful. Jennifer, what's your big picture reaction to this question?
Immediately, I want to talk to your colleague, because how is it that people can love Darth Vader, who is a mass murderer, one of the worst people in the galaxy, and yet he's all over everything from mugs to t-shirts, and everyone loves him. But the minute that you put that in the package of, Kylo Ren, Ben, and suddenly you're shipping. It's like romance. Because it's seen as more female coded. Suddenly it's problematic. That's when I start getting a little angry. And let it be known, I'm a Reylo. I like it. And this is an interesting question, thought, because I feel like the characters of Rey, Leia, and Padme it's not necessarily that they feel like they can change their man, although I definitely can see that with Padme more so than the other two. It's more that they believe that they can change the galaxy. They believe in hope. They are optimists. And I would even argue that like Leia is really strong-willed, stubborn, and so is Han. So they're kind of an even match in that sense. But yeah, I just think that they believe the best in people. That's why they're heroes. Certainly better than me, who is more of a pessimist. But yeah, those are my initial thoughts, but I have a lot more.
I think those are great starting point thoughts. I think you're very right to point out the gender dynamics with Vader and Ben Solo. I think there's also this part of it that's kind of almost funny to me that we talk a lot about, A New Hope has horrific things happening in it. The genocide of Alderaan. Once you know the relationship between Vader and Leia, he's torturing his daughter, who does look a lot like his dead wife. There's some horrible stuff going on there, but the film is pitched as hopeful, fun. The good guys win. We don't dwell on it. We're not made to feel those things. I also just think that from the beginning, Vader was this kind of different kind of icon of evil. In my question to you, Jennifer, as an expert on Star Wars and 70s variety shows, if after The Last Jedi came out, Kylo Ren had been dancing disco in a variety show, do you think the edge would have come off the argument the way it did with Vader?
That is a good point, right? That is a good point. I just immediately think of the dancing Vaders on that French variety show.
Right. It's just
absurd. No, I think in this day and age, people still would point to the reality, which again, this is fantasy, people. Come on. Like, we can't apply the same principles of our world to Star Wars. It's certainly not physics or anything like that. So, yeah. Again, I go to why people are so angry at Reylos. I don't think it's just because it's, Ben Solo is a mass murderer. I think there's other things at play.
It does feel to me like that there are plenty of stories where a woman falls in love with a morally reprehensible or morally gray person, and that there is something a little bit more going on with the culture of shipping. And as always, whenever we discuss this, of course there are good faith people who are just like, that relationship didn't work for them. If you're a good faith person, we're not talking about you, so you don't need to be upset. Anyway. Sorry. I'll take a step back. We have been getting lots of comments where I feel like we're really making an effort to separate out that there are people who attack certain storylines because they just don't want to see representation, or they don't like that this person wrote a show. And we take so much effort to say, and of course there are good faith people who just, the show didn't work for them. And then we continue to get comments like, oh, so if you didn't like it, you're toxic. Like, no. We said it 17 times. We caveated it 17 times. So if you're making those comments, either you're not listening or anyway. All right. Moving on. Ken, what is your big picture reaction? We can get into the weeds. I'm just looking for big picture.
Yeah, I'm also thinking of the people that also say, oh, well, you all haven't considered this, and then quote one of us from the show back to us. Not listening there. That's a different time.
Yep. Not even that many of them. Just it's a thread.
First of all, let me start here. I think, Addie, I think your theory is somewhat right. Much like I had a theory following 1999's The Phantom Menace that maybe Star Wars is just a story of little Anakin Skywalker trying to get his pet droid back. That it's just 6 movies of him chasing 3PO. I don't know. From a certain point of view, I think that's very true. I think it's at best. I think the Han and Leia is the best example of it. Of where it ends up to me is so realistic. It's one of the things we love about Force Awakens. So I do think it's there. I don't know. The where I go initially to this is that it is so complicated. I don't want to step in on any level. I think it's important for paradigms and tropes and everything to be broken and new angles on it. And a lot of what's at play here is just kind of the status quo, not just in Star Wars but in our society. This plays out in a lot of ways in real life, and the "I can fix him" trope is a hacky punchline at this point. It's also at times very real. So I think it's natural to see it reflected in Star Wars, but I think it's important to push past it. I tried really hard to push past it with Rey and Kylo. Whether I thought they were to end up together or not, I thought the stuff in Last Jedi was some true Star Wars intimacy. I just kept saying I want Rey to make her own choice here. I want Rey to do something different, and that was where I came down on it there too. So yeah, I don't know. There's so much in it. I don't want to upset Jen.
That's okay. That's all right. That's all right.
We'll see if this upsets Jen. That's not the game that we're trying to do. This is
come at me, bro.
Come at now. I don't think this will upset you because it's building on what you said, Jen, which is like there's a huge gender dynamic to this question. I would say this question is entirely gendered. Is this about women trying to fix bad men? Is that the story of Star Wars? I do think, though, entangled with it is something that is related but separate, which is just Star Wars being a story about hope, like you said, Jennifer. And I think we've had longer episodes about this, but, that word redemption gets thrown around, and even Lucas talks about it being the redemption of Anakin. But I think redemption is one word, but there's also hope that things can always be better. There's also just mercy. Nobody's saying you deserve forgiveness, but I'm not going to kill you for what you did. I'm not going to turn around and commit violence. I'm going to arguably Luke is showing his father Vader mercy when he cuts his hand off in Return of the Jedi, but doesn't take his head. How will this fix anything? And I think sometimes we can kind of run with that of that and the word of redemption as sort of like if Anakin had lived and Luke took him back to Endor. I don't think Luke is going to be like, but guys, he made a better choice. Let's just forget about everything. I don't think Star Wars is trying to say, oh, you made one better choice. Forget it. Come to the party, Ben. Come to the party, Anakin. I don't think that's a story. I think the hope of Star Wars is that anybody, even after years of being wrapped in this sort of destructive, addictive trap of the dark side, that they could make a better choice to step away. And I don't think we've got quite as many Star Wars stories as a lot of us would like about like, well, what does that look like when people kind of work to make amends? But I don't think Anakin or Ben Solo or even Chimere or even Asajj Ventress or any Darksider is meant to have their horrible acts wiped away and go, it doesn't matter. To me, it's the idea of never giving up hope that people can make better choices. And with a character like Ventress, we've got to see a little bit of her path of, okay, I'm not going to be that person anymore. I'm going to conduct myself differently, and I'm going to reach out to this child Omega, and I'm still snarky, and I'm still myself, but I'm going to try to help her and make a different choice. So for me, there's it isn't just about, he says he doesn't want kids and won't be a responsible parent, but can I change him? Like it's not just those day-to-day sort of gendered things. It's this much larger idea of, can someone who's done horrible things stop and make a better choice? And then maybe we need to deal with the fact that they do still have culpability for all the horrible things they did. Jennifer, any thoughts on just kind of that, how Star Wars handles the idea of redemption, mercy, hope? And are those things necessarily the same as forgiveness?
This is when it starts to get very real world, and and that's when I start to have a little bit more issues with it, especially which is why I liked The Acolyte, was because it was like giving into I don't want to say your worst instinct. Well, yeah, your worst instincts, but having it feel cathartic. So what I will say is that Star Wars, the original trilogy, is full of tropes, right? Like you're saying, the hero, the scoundrel with a heart of gold, the bad boy who eventually comes to the light side. So that's why for me, Kylo Ren kind of fits in with that, which also fits in with just like Humphrey Bogart and Bacall. It fits in with love stories. It fits in with romance novels. Like, this is just fun fantasy. We all have moments where we feel like we are monstrous, right? That's why these monster creatures also work really well in horror films, because we all have that side of our humanity where we feel like the worst of ourselves. And we want to also believe that we can have redemption and we can make good, and that our fate is not totally sealed off to something else, right? That we can change our destiny, that we can become the hero. So that's why I love Ben and Ray together.
Yeah.
Because they both are two people who have experienced terrible trauma, who are finding each other. That's why The Last Jedi is so great. I mean, it's not wrong to like ship them, because it is, that sexual tension is baked into that film. We are meant to feel that. So when people are like, you're not supposed to ship them, it's like, well, but that's like that's what we're getting from the film, is that like that intimacy, like you're saying, that connection that these two lonely people who are on the wrong, right, one on the wrong side of the tracks, whatever, that what is it, star-crossed lovers, right? That's what's in the film. And so that's why I'm like, it's not wrong. It's not wrong to love these two.
Yeah.
Anyways,
No, it wasn't a giant leap. No.
Yeah.
No. I mean, I think that intimacy is very clear with the finger touch, and even like the discovery by your parent. It's like, I mean, I'm not going to go into the real world stuff, but like, how many of us when you were young were like, maybe kissing somebody when the parent walks in, and if they could have blown your room apart with the Force like Luke did, they might have, if they're worried about the relationship. Obviously, intimacy. What I love about that relationship is it's like they're like, do you feel alone? Do you question what to do with all this power? Do you feel like you have nobody to talk to? Agreed. What are you going to do with your power? Guy was like, kill everybody. And Ray's like, save everybody. Whoa, wait.
Yeah.
Not compatible.
Right.
Yeah.
They're so awkward together too, which is wonderful. Especially the infamous shirtless scene. It's not that that's like overtly sexual, like Chimere, where it's like weaponized. There's like this almost teenage awkwardness where he's just standing there, and she's like, "Okay, I'm kind of into this, and I'm kind of not. You're weird." Like I love that. I just think that was so, and that's all a testament to their great performances, right? Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley. They truly did have great chemistry.
Extremely powerful. Ken, how are you feeling these days about Star Wars' general attitude toward redemption, mercy, hope, what it means when a darksider makes a better choice, what Star Wars is trying to say?
I think it starts kind of where you were going, and I think in the past I've said too that like, hey, everyone, calm down. These are modern myths, and we're teaching kind of big, sometimes sweeping general lessons about the choices we make. And yeah, there's some details of Anakin's Sith resume that would have to be dealt with, and I'm excited at times to see them push past that. I do think Acolyte did that. I think that's why I would always say, and we said every week, it was a fun show to discuss, if not challenging at times. That came up a lot on our live stream we just did recently, and what the Acolyte meant to you. It was like, it challenged people, and it challenged in a lot of ways you're describing, Jen, of just not just paradigm and trope breaking, but asking more real questions in kind of this high fantasy story. I wanted Kylo in episode 9. I kind of was on I think he has to die phase, but I also was interested in the idea of just what kind of you talked about, Joseph, of him showing up at the New Republic base going, hi, sorry about that. Sorry about Crate. I think it would be fun to see that dealt with in a big modern myth way, but also I can get, make sure I'm saying, not at you, Jen, but I get sometimes grumpy where I think sometimes that old media literacy term comes into play, where like anything Kylo says to Rey is not what the movie's saying, but sometimes out there in the public it's taken like that. But all that speaks to me is kind of what I think you're talking about, or what you gravitated towards doing the Acolyte, Jen, of dealing with it in a little more realistic way, because maybe our story demands as a society have changed and grown and evolved. That's what we kind of want. It gets wrapped up sometimes in the gray area or gray morality, but that's just because it's life. And I think Acolyte dealt with life as we know it a little bit more versus high fantasy. Still think it was high fantasy, still think it was pulp, still think all that stuff. But you know what I mean? Where it's like, something from 1977 that was taken from something, decades before and telling this story of good and evil, not unlike Lord of the Rings, telling a story of good and evil. But, and this is my week to mention Rings of Power 15 times, that show, particularly season 1, said, hey, let's take good and evil and ask the question, how can you tell the difference between the two? And how do you approach that? And I thought that was a good pushing the ball a little more down the field to deal with it in a modern way. So I'll end my rant here saying, Jen, I just didn't want them to get together because I thought Kylo had to pay for some sins.
I know.
I mean, I think it also gets, for me, the whole Kylo thing gets conflated too with the goal of that film and that series wasn't just to deal with that relationship or deal with Kylo's need to take culpability. I think there are other considerations, and we talked a lot back in the day. And there's a part of me that would have loved it if he survived. And Rey was like, come back with me," and me like, "No, I don't deserve to be that party. I'm going to go to Octo and think, and I will force Skype you in 6 months after I meditate and figure out where I'm going to go." That would have been a very different, a less mythic and a more very open, 21st century modern aware, talk about our feelings kind of ending. You could have made it mythic, but in my opinion, whether you like it or not, and people have very strong feelings about it, I think part of his story wasn't he can't live because he did too many bad things. I think it was, this is an effort to complete the story of the Skywalker saga, and there's an elegance to me to he ends his life with a sacrifice, with a giving of himself, and the Skywalker bloodline. That's the complete story of the Skywalker bloodline, and now the spirit and the idea and all of the things that make family live on in Rey. There's an elegance to that, and I think those considerations are in play in the film as much as, I don't think the goal of the film is relationships with troubled people, a guideline, So for me, I would love to get into some of the specifics of these relationships of the Rey, Leia, Padme, because I really agree with your big picture thought, Jennifer, that I think it's more about these characters having a big, the women in these situations having a sense of hope and a sense of not, I can change him, but rather, I don't think you're being your real self. I think I see something good in you, and it would be great if that came out. In particular, since we're talking about Rey and Kylo, let's talk about that one a little bit more specifically. I think, I don't think Rey ever has, it's a fun joke, but I don't think Rey has big, I can change him. I think she makes a connection with him, and she's like, I think I saw something, and I think he is going to turn to the light, and he's going to be on our side. Luke's like, ain't going to happen. She goes to him. It doesn't happen. And she's like, well, bye. And then in Rise of Skywalker, she doesn't want to have anything to do with him. It's him coming after her again and again. And then she even says the great line of like, I did want to take your hand, Ben's hand, which is just a like, hey, if you ever get your bleep together, you're welcome to call me. Bye. I don't think that's a like, yeah, I know he's got problems, but I'm going to bring him to Thanksgiving dinner. And I think that's totally a, dude, you work your bleep out and then you give me a call in terms of real world stuff. Jennifer, how do you feel about Rey and Kylo? Do you think it's I can save him, or do you think it's something different?
No, I think she's on her own journey. She's on living her life. Right. And he's there, and they connect in this moment, and it doesn't work out. And she's like, she has a very healthy approach. She moves on. Right. I don't see her as defined by her relationship with Ben at all. But again, I think that she wants to assume the best in people. Like, she wants to assume Luke is going to help her. And she believes, in spite of everything that she's been through, she is hopeful. So of course she's going to want to believe that, Kylo Ren can be Ben, because that's what she sees, the good in people. But
yeah. And there's two big ones. I love that moment in Rise of Skywalker of the Ben's hand, you dolt. Come back, like you said. Call me when you're ready, fool. But she does that with Luke too, right?
Yeah.
I think she shows up. You could almost make the joke. She shows up with Luke, like I can change this old grizzled warrior. But then after a while, she's like, got it. And maybe she's wrong to run off, and there's some of those. But she does it too. Like, cool. I can do this on my own. I'll figure it out. And maybe it's going to go a little wrong, and it's going to blow up in my face a little bit. But I ain't making this decision. on my own. And you can either keep up or you can sit here on this island, old man. Like I love that energy from her, and that showed up again. I think you're right, Jennifer. She wasn't defined by it at all. Yeah, there's many always what ifs and different ways to approach it, but I like what's present.
Yeah, and I also just again don't think it's like this complete forgiveness. I think to me it's she stabs him, which like hey, totally understandable that you would want to stop this horrific monster who's you watched murder their own father, all that. But she realizes she's getting nothing of that. And it's mercy. The actual definition of mercy is compassion or forgiveness shown towards someone whom it is within one's power to punish or harm. She could have let him sit there and die, and she shows him mercy by giving him life. And but it's not like she doesn't pick him up and take her with him, which is I think would be I can change him energy. Moving on to Leia. Jennifer, what's your reading with the Leia Han relationship? Do you think Leia is in a I can change him relationship with Han?
No, I think that she is her own person, and she gets it, right? And like I said, she is strong herself, she's stubborn herself, and it is that classic 1940s type of movie where you have these two, the battle of the wits, right? And so I think that she doesn't believe she can change him. She is who she is, and she sees that he's a scoundrel. And I just think it's that kind of classic old Hollywood movie style to it that kind of lends itself to that like romance. But no, she is her own princess. So it is a self-saving princess.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, and I think that she sees something that we, the audience, are meant to see as well, like the scoundrel with the heart of gold. Of like, oh, you're capable of making better choices. She got the line in A New Hope. I knew there was more to you than money. And then he's leaving an empire and thinking about himself and being selfish. And there's a frustration that he's not living up to his best self. But she's not changing what she's doing based on his choices. I think, you know, what happens more than anything in Empire is she is changed by her proximity to him in that she realizes a truth for herself that she wants to open up and feel more, that she wants to allow herself to have love as a part of her life, to have that as part of her relationship. I think that's the arc of why she is open enough to the Force to sense Luke, because she's been so focused on being the leader that she has been sort of denying her own emotions. And I think it's to me, an empowering story of her saying, but being emotional can be a part of who I am too, and being open to that. So I think it's more like Leia saves herself, Leia changes herself, Leia lets her own emotions come out. And then I think Han changes because he sees the truth that everybody is there for him, a thing that he thought was impossible. So I think they both change, but I don't think it's in any sort of toxic Leia, you know, won't give up on this bad boy until he gets a good, responsible job. I think they bring out the best in one another. Yes. And live a happy life together, and only split up because they go through a horrific tragedy. And then, you know, it's not like we tried it didn't work. Like they went through horrific tragedy.
No,
what are your thoughts? I
love what you're both saying. Big ForceCenter well said's around, and when you get into it again, fun conversation, like you said, Addie, silly questions that lead to deeper things. Like, yeah, it's definitely it's 70s big myth tropes, right? It's scoundrel, princess, it's the banter. We've all taught the bogey and Bacall of it all is there on purpose, and it's fun. That's why I love the Empire stuff. There, her like, get out of here. My station's collapsing. I don't need you. Like, but I love what you said, Joseph. They bring out the best in each other. You know, Han's journey of always running away of who he maybe knows he should be and could be, and I mean, yeah, Leia literally has it in A New Hope, telling Luke, yeah, don't worry about him. Paraphrasing, obviously a lot, but yeah, don't worry about him. He'll find his way. We don't need him. And then, like, when she celebrates, like, I knew there was more. I wasn't going to wait around for it. I'm glad you saved us, by the way, but I wasn't going to wait around for it. I'm glad you stepped up. And the I love you, I know, to me, as much as that is a, you know, wonderful Star Wars urban legend told many different ways on who came up with that decision, I love that it happened, no matter how we got to that point. I love you, I know, to me, is Han kind of going, yeah, I know. And I'm glad you've seen it. I'm glad you can come to that, because you have so much weight on your shoulders. You have the galaxy on your shoulders, but you can still be a complete person. So all that's great. Ends with a kiss in front of Ewoks, which I remember I pulled that card from the Return of the Jedi Topps trading pack, and I hid it from my mom because I didn't want her to see open mouth kissing on a baseball card. didn't. True story. Very true story. But I'd love, yeah.
Is it the Ewok's mouth that's open on that trading card?
I don't know.
Oh
I
my
don't
gosh.
know. We all grew up in the 80s, kids, under the oppression of the satanic panic.
It was a great time.
Yeah, it was a great time. But yeah, I don't want to get turned into Force Awakens conversation, but it's still one of my favorite decisions that I understand people might not like and might not gravitate to on the surface. And I didn't initially too. One of the great love stories of our time, Han and Leia, picks up with them separated, apart. I still got the starting point of that being question mark, but it's still one of my favorite decisions they made. It just in a movie, in a sequel, but in a movie that's about the shadows of the past and how it affects everyone, especially those who lived it, and that they have to not just find their way back, but really, dig in on who they are and who they can be for each other, and the tragedy of Han's final decision being not turning back for once because Leia asked him to, but also knew he could do it. Like, I don't know. It's very realistic in a non-myth way, but I absolutely champion it. It's one of my favorite decisions, and just as a great tragic but great end and button on the story for me.
Yeah, I mean that I'm sure the title Force Awakens was tested and blah blah blah, but that Awakens is there for a reason. Everything is old and awakens, and I think their relationship does too. Shall we move on to Padme? The reason for this question, lurking underneath it all for Addie, one of our biggest Padme fans, who sends in questions. Yeah, I don't sense a lot of desire from my co-host. So I'll go for it, Ken.
The only thing I'll say is I will get, not with us, I sometimes out in the world get a little defensive of the prequels or even George himself. Not everything was handled perfectly. Does he lack some depth and nuance in some areas of his writing? Of course, he'd be the first to tell you. So I do think by the time we get to Revenge of the Sith, it's not going the way it should go, and we have some questionable decisions. And her dying, but I just sometimes going even something you said in the early gen of like, I think you're all reading too deeply into something that was just a big space fantasy opera. But it doesn't mean it's not there, and we don't need to discuss it. That's my starting point is. It is a both great love story and a tragic love story and a tremendously problematic story with the current lens we have. But that's my starting point.
I think some of the things that can be difficult with the Anakin and Padme relationship were not helped by the word "milady" coming to a different cultural relevance of being a thing that creepy dudes with fedoras said to people on the internet. It did not help that Anakin had fedora speak there for that kind of moment in our cultural history years later. Anyway, I do think my prequel take is I feel like I to this day believe that some of the execution isn't exactly what I would want it to be, but I think the underlying ideas are so strong, and my passion for the prequels partially comes from, for a long time, I just reacted to the surface. I just reacted to the quickest assumptions from the execution, and then when I took some time to sink into it and go, but what are the characters really saying? What do they mean? What do they feel? I think there's a lot of depth and power, and it's all understandable. I think for me, I don't think Padme is an I can change him. I think Padme has I think Padme sees a wounded, abandoned, lonely person that she met as a child who lost their mother, grew up in horrific circumstances, and I think she has great empathy for him and great understanding for why he would be struggling in life. And I think she is a person who wants to help other people. And I think on top of that, her story is very similar to Leia in that she legitimately loves him. He is legitimately interesting and exciting to her. And she has said, I have too many responsibilities and I can't have love in my life. I think that's there in the films. It gets really expanded in E.K. Johnston's great novels and even the Brotherhood novel. That her relationship with Anakin is about her, of like, I know it's dangerous, I know it's problematic for my career, but I want to be a fully rounded person who has emotion in her life. I think I don't think she's an I can change him. I think she's an I see the best in him. And in the Clone Wars animated series and in Revenge of the Sith, when he steps out of line, there's no excuses. You know, when he beats the crap out of, you know, Rush Clovis, she's like, get out of here and maybe get out of my life. We're maybe done. Go. You know, one of her most famous lines is, you're going down a path I can't follow. To me, that's not the language of an I can change him trope. It's a, you've made a bad choice and I'm not condoning it. I'm not excusing it, and I'm not following it. So that's where I go with Padme. Jennifer, any Padme thoughts?
You should have gone last. Addie, I'm sorry. I know you love Padme. One of the reasons why I've always struggled with the prequels, and I do enjoy them, thanks to you both. You've helped me find things that I love about the prequels. And I love Revenge of the Sith. It is my favorite one. However, that is the one where I do get the most I can change him energy from Padme. Helplessness. And I know, and I'm listening to what you're saying, Joseph. I'm like, that makes sense. But when I'm watching it, I get angry and I just feel a little bit like, come on. Like, I know what George was going for. And here again, we see like these classic movie kind of thing of, you know, the damsel in distress kind of vibe. And I get it, but I don't like it. And obviously the death and everything, I just really struggle with it. And this is one where I do see that I can change him. And her actions do feel kind of dictated by him. And she does seem kind of defined by their relationship. It's just really complicated. And you know, that's just what my heart says. But I know that she is a fan favorite. She's beloved. She's a wonderful character. I love Natalie Portman. There's so many great things to love about the character, but I do see it in this one. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with any of that, particularly when it comes to Revenge of the Sith. To me, I feel like a lot of what I like about the character is she is already on a trajectory and I already know things about this character. And what she's advocating for is, well, maybe we should just, if you're not doing well, maybe we should just step away from all this. We can just be a family. Maybe we can just relieve this pressure and make a better, healthier choice. So yeah, there's some advocating for that. But I really agree with you I think there's a great detriment to the film and the character that the scenes where she is organizing what becomes a rebellion are deleted, because it gives her a fuller picture, a fuller life. We know it's there, you know, because that's always who the character's been, but it's not in the film. And so the vast majority of her scenes are in response to, let's deal with Anakin's problems. But I feel like it's more, let's deal with Anakin's problems than let's pretend he doesn't have problems. It's, let's get him to talk to Obi-Wan. Let's, you know, step away from this. Like, in some ways it feels a little bit less mythic and a little bit more like, yeah, if your spouse really was having a hard time, these are the things you'd offer them of like, do you need to talk to a friend? Do you need to step away from the thing that is stressing you?
Yeah.
So I guess for me, it just feels like, I'm not going to say a good marriage, but I feel like the things that she offers are not sweeping the problem under the rug. She offers ways to address the problem. But I do not disagree with you in the big picture, Jennifer, at all, that I think Lucas was trying to create some mystery around her death, but clearly everybody just walked away with the medical analysis droid is correct and she lost the will to live. And it's mushy, and the majority of her scenes are very responsive to Anakin. I don't disagree with any of that, and it is one of my big criticisms of Revenge of the Sith. I wish she was more fully present.
And Anakin's problematic. He's like possessive. He's the problem. I mean, it's not Padme, you know, and I think that's another thing where it's like we've all kind of seen or been in those relationships where it's like you're with this really possessive person and it's just awful. And so maybe that's part of it as I see that, you know, and I'm just like, run away. He's so yes, you're saying like a good marriage and whatever, but he was toxic to begin with, and she shouldn't have gotten with him. Learn and get out.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a good marriage. I'm saying those are the things that I think one should offer when your partner is stressed. Do you want to talk to a friend? Do you need to step away from the things that are stressing you? You know, And
Yeah.
yeah, it's not great that the largest part of her role in Revenge of the Sith is offering Anakin better choices of what to do with his problems that he does not take. Yeah,
Right.
I would love to do a cut of the like a version of the prequels, and this feeds into a little bit of how I was protective of Rey as a character, where I had those thoughts too, Jed, of no, you deserve better, or no choice, you know, go live your life by yourself. You know, you can go to the movies by yourself, right? You can go take yourself to lunch, go sit at the bar. No one. I had a little bit of that because of, I think you could do a cut of the prequels where, especially from Attack of the Clones on, where a lot of points in Anakin's life or some of his actions, I could just pop up on the screen and be like, guys, don't do that. Just speaking to the old classic early 2000s straight dudes, like, ding, no, guys, bad decision. Because it was all just kind of the wallpaper. We didn't see it, unfortunately. And I think that's important to grow. Look, the manic pixie dream girl trope is a real thing. But this isn't to defend it, but I'm always like, yeah, because most screenwriters writing those films at the time were lonely, weird dudes sitting in coffee shops hoping that some girl with pink hair changed their life. So they just wrote a script about it. And that's the problem. That's a whole other thing. And then that's kind of where some of the stuff came from. And I just think so much of the prequel, and it's not necessarily George. I just think George tried to write at the time. It's so much of the time where you just want to be like, yep, don't touch her arm. Anakin, nope. Don't do that. Don't talk about nope.
Yeah.
You possessive little boy. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think some of it might come from a distinction between, are we looking at just the prequel films, or are we looking at the relationship in the Clone Wars animated series, the books, but particularly the Clone Wars animated series, because I think another huge part of the dynamic of the relationship for me is that George showed us flashes of the good man of Anakin, but we spent a lot of time with troubled, difficult Anakin in the films. And one of the great things about the Clone Wars is you get to see the guy that Obi-Wan is best friends with. You get to see the amazing, kind brother figure to Ahsoka. You get to see the fun, exciting, dashing, charming, good man who makes good choices that Padme saw in the Clone Wars. And so I think that just kind of softens me to some of the parts of the prequel films that can be a rough ride in their execution for me.
Yeah. Yep. We handled that perfectly. Everything.
We did. Perfect. Here's my final thought, and then we can take a break and answer a much shorter question. I would really love, this is more response to Rey and Kylo, I would really love a major Star Wars project to do a full-on romance. Not subtle, not winking, not running in the background, not getting a vibe between these two, but lean into it. It is the story, and tackle some of these ideas of romance and relationships straight on, because I feel like we have mostly had not a lot of romance, or kind of, you know, there's a vibe that you pick up on. We all are agreeing that Last Jedi is pretty explicit, but at the same time, you know. Ken, what are your thoughts about more full-on romance in Star Wars?
Yeah. Make it happen. Ahsoka, Bo-Katan, Finn and Poe. I don't care. You know, make it happen. Claude and anyone Claude meets. I agree with you. I think it's interesting, and it's never been stated explicitly, like, by anyone in Star Wars or anyone making films. But by 2014, 2015, but definitely by 2017, there is this thing of like, hey, we don't have to always. It does not have to be that. A love is present, or it's a romance thing. This is not just in Star Wars. There was a reaction to some overt sex scenes in popular TV shows on HBO. That there was a definite good switch, and then I'm not saying it's an overcorrection, but you hear those stories. I read on the old TikTok that, you know, Gen Z doesn't enjoy open mouth kissing in movies. My mom would finally agree with the younger generation, where you're seeing these stories of like it's a generation completely in touch with who they are in terms of sexual identity, but they also don't want to see it just thrown away pointlessly in a movie just to be there. But then that's not necessarily always the case. And so it's a fascinating discussion that I think around the time of Force Awakens, and definitely by Last Jedi, of like, I kind of felt like, well, the conversation should be that Rey doesn't need anybody. How about that? How about we start with that? But to that point, to your point, Joseph, yeah, when we talked about it here before too over the years, like, man, let's put Padme and Anakin on a shelf, but Han and Leia, man, That was our bogey book call. That we grew. That's why I call it the greatest love story of all time for my generation. It was The Princess and the Scoundrel. Yeah, let's do this. Let's get the Millennium Falcon and fly around the galaxy. And I do think that's missing. So no matter how you do it, find a way. Make Star Wars the romance movie.
Yeah. Jennifer, how do you feel about more romance in Star Wars?
We had a weird kind of dark romance potentially in The Acolyte. And I think that's why it really hit like online, is people were like, yes, sexiness is back in Star Wars. And you had these two characters potentially in season 2 with Chimera and Osha, who could embark on this bad romance, if you will, right? I was really looking forward to that, and it felt right. It felt time. I think the problem with the Star Wars romance is that you have the toxic fan base who is not going to like it. First of all, they're going to be like, it's too quote unquote like feminine or whatever. And then they're going to be like, we want a certain type of romance, right? So that's the other thing. It's like, well, what kind of romance do we want to have? Why not have more of inclusive romances, right? And I just think that we're going to butt up against what we've been butting up against with The Acolyte. So as much as I want to see romance, I feel like it's really going to be limited. And so we probably won't get it for a while. I really felt like The Acolyte could have broke through because it was like kind of like darker romance, right? I think the traditional romance that we're thinking of with Han and Leia, I think it might be a while before we see that.
I think you might be right, but if anybody's taking votes, because I just think some of the all the stuff with Rey and Kylo is very interesting to discuss. And for me, a part of the point of art is to reflect on, what do you see in it? What do you see in it? How does it affect your life? How does it affect the real world? What is mythic? All this stuff that we've been talking about. And I think the more you just kind of hint at it around the edges, the more it's sort of unclear what the show is trying to wrestle with or say. So like, I would love a season 2 of Acolyte where like, hey, it's crystal clear that one of the reasons Osha made this choice is she's into him. Right. Now, what does this mean? What does this mean? I mean, and obviously that one episode was a seduction, but it was a seduction on multiple levels. And I'd be like, okay, take the metaphor away. And they like each other. They are into each other. Let's have a vocal, clear story about it so we can deal with it without the sort of ambiguities and be clear about what the show's saying.
Guys, Jen, it all comes down to open mouth kissing. I don't know how to tell you.
Listen, I've seen some talk around Star Wars Outlaws about the character not being hot enough or something.
Oh,
I'm
well,
like, are you what? Okay.
That's it.
You know, like
that's a lot of miladies with YouTube channels.
Yeah, and I just feel like that's going to come into play. And so it's like, come on, children, let's get it together so we can have some hotness in Star Wars. Good Lord.
I don't think Kay cares about that. I haven't played the game yet, but
All right, I'm fine. Look, I want. It can be closed mouth kissing and open heart romance. That's all I want. I want to deal with intimacy on all levels in Star Wars.
John,
closed mouth, open heart.
Yeah, John,
lose.
We're so glad you're back in the recording studio to do the score. This next scene is all about open mouth kissing. Can you give us a song? Well, I did write one.
Oil.
Yeah, I did write one about open mouth kissing. It was Princess Leia's theme. George, you changed it.
Have to freeze for
all right. And with that, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be back to talk about cars. Back in a moment. And we have returned from a super easy, super fast conversation about romance dynamics in Star Wars. And we will wrap up with a blissfully more direct question. Joking, Addie. Thank you for the fun and good question. This comes to us from Brandy Kaler. Brandy says, hello, ForceCenter friends. I was curious if there are any vehicles in Star Wars that resemble any vehicles in our real world. I asked this because I've seen at least 10 smart cars, those very small two-door cars, so far this spring, early summer, and I was surprised that those cars are still around. And it brought up a memory that I have forgotten about, so I decided to ask this question. Back when smart cars were all the rage, my cousin decided to get one. My mom and I were very confused as we didn't see him as a person who'd buy such a small vehicle. Spoiler alert, he no longer has a smart car, but a truck. When asked why he got that car, he bluntly told us, it reminded me of a Star Wars vehicle, and left it at that. I don't remember when smart cars became the it car, but I believe it was sometime between the Clone Wars and the Force Awakens. As far as I can remember, I don't recall seeing a smart car looking vehicle in Star Wars. So I ask you, Ken, Joseph, and Jennifer, is there really a smart car or any real world vehicle looking, or any real world vehicle that looks like a vehicle in Star Wars? Or is my cousin making up excuses for getting this Death Star trap of a car? Thanks, and may the Force be with you. A lot of interesting and fun things in this question. I love hearing from somebody who is trying to remember when a car came out based on the timeline of what Star Wars properties were prevalent. I married my wife between the Clone Wars and the Force Awakens. So I did just look up some quick smart car details. They were around earlier in different parts of the world. I saw a bunch of them in 2006 in London, but they first became available in the US in 2008. I don't know where Brandy is writing from, but in the US, they first became available in 2008. They exited the US market in 2019. I've been seeing a couple more, so I wonder if it is just the life cycle of used cars. I'll also say a thing that may be controversial. People are going to have different opinions, but there have been a lot of studies where smart cars are not actually do quite well on crash tests as opposed to other cars. I understand the concern that, of course, it's a smaller car and it is going to move farther if hit by a larger car. But on some of the tests of like, does the car actually crunch a lot? It's built so it does protect the driver according to many tests and statistics. Your opinion may vary, your research may vary, but I looked that up, and it is Googleable for all to form your opinion about whether the smart car is a death trap. So, smart car facts out of the way. Let's get back to the Star Wars. Ken, what are your thoughts on what Brandy's person in there? Their cousin, when they decided to get a smart car because it looks like a vehicle from Star Wars.
I mean, the closest I could think is like those minifigs from Kenner, like the mini rigs. It's something that it was off screen in Endor or in the Battle of Hoth. There was a little smart ship flying around. I saw one not 2 days ago. Really weird timing on this question. I saw one in Burbank. But other than that, like, I don't know. The A-Wing is kind of the closest thing. I just think it's the idea of it is, especially if this is a question or someone that's in the States, like it had the vibe of a car of the future. And it's like that's kind of your gut reaction. Whether it's a car or a nuclear missile defense system that you launch into space, call it Star Wars, because that's where it goes. But I'm not saying your cousin is wrong here, Brandy. That's kind of where I thought. You know what? It feels like it's something that would belong on Cloud City too. It's a little.
Yes.
It's a do car. It just goes around.
Yeah. I mean, if you imagine a smart car with a bar between it, and then there's another smart car, it does start to look a little bit like the Cloud car.
Now,
odds.
That I get into that too.
Definitely hard to do some parallel parking with the Cloud car here in Los Angeles. Jennifer, what is your thought on what Star Wars vehicle the smart car might look like?
I agree with you, Ken. My mind went to like when you see something, like for example, this morning I saw a porcupine eating a strawberry, and I was like, that looks like a Star Wars creature, specifically Basil.
Yes.
Like, why do our brains think like that? Right? It's because it's like something that's like because we think about Star Wars a lot. It's otherworldly, right? And yet it kind of feels familiar. I actually think smart cars remind me of Utopia and Tomorrowland. That kind of retro futurism, or if the smart car was yellow. Okay, there's a lot in the prequels of like yellow vehicles, so maybe like N1 Starfighter, like the cockpit of it, the cockpit of Anakin's pod racer. Like, I don't know. I'm reaching. I don't think it's Rey's speeder though. Rey's speeder is too big.
Yeah, no, it's a very chunky design compared to the smooth flowing lines. I feel like it's more like it looks like Doug Chang drew the smart car. It does have this sort of fluid lines that I think are evocative of some of the designs from the prequels. But from Ken, my mind went to the exact same place that Ken are mini rigs. Because some of them are their own original vehicles, but some of them are like, what if this normal Star Wars vehicle, but made smaller, like the way the smart card is, like what if a car but half of it's gone and it's just it's like the PDT-8 is an original one, but then they also had the ISP-6, which is basically just like the Imperial shuttle, but just for one figure. They had the one person skiff. And I remember even as a kid, I loved all things Star Wars, but it felt a little, I didn't super want any of those that just look like, you can't get a real skiff where you can fit like 12 dudes. You just have like this one where Klaatu's just alone in it. So I think that's got some serious smart car vibes there.
I love, yeah, there's that, remember that Hot Wheels toy I grabbed at a 7-Eleven years ago? It's Palpatine on a little mini Imperial shuttle. Like that, I'm looking, I can't reach it. Right. It literally looks like he's driving a smart car.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So there's a smart car specific part of this question. And then there is the larger question, any vehicles that resemble, Star Wars vehicles that resemble vehicles in our real world. Jennifer, do you feel like any vehicles either physically resemble Star Wars vehicles or make you think of Star Wars vehicles?
Certainly. Yeah, that Tesla truck, right? Is it considered to be a truck? What is it called?
The Cybertruck. It's considered to be something.
Yeah. That kind of reminds me of like a Jawa sandcrawler, right? A little bit.
Oh yeah, it's got some really angular lines. Yeah.
I could see that as a Star Wars vehicle. That's the only one that comes to mind, though.
Yeah. What Star Wars vehicle gets recalled a lot? Because that's the one the Cybertruck is like.
Yeah. Speaking of Death Trap.
Yeah. So, Ken, you and I have talked often that we had the same first car of a Ford Fairmont. And by the time I got my first one, which was in the late 90s, and it was from the late 70s, it had this sort of like, it's an old, reliable clunker. Doesn't look like much on the outside, but, you know, my dad had made a lot of special modifications. So it didn't physically look a lot like the Millennium Falcon, but it so felt like the Millennium Falcon. Yeah. And it had a bank of one of the distinctive things about it that separates it from all the other just large cars you would see destroyed on chips. Was that it had this bank of big brake lights. That did look a little like the Falcon. That just that lineup of vertical rectangles. So the back end of it did remind me of the Falcon's engines. But other than that, it was the vibe. It wasn't physically what it looked like. And I think I have that relationship to cars. Like, do certain ones have the personality of a Star Wars vehicle rather than physically looking like them?
Yeah, I mean, my Millennium Fairmont was exactly what you're saying. It was a hunk of junk, but it was almost reliable. But it would always break down at times. That was a thing. And I wish my dad had made modifications. You could fit Chewie in the trunk. It was just a giant trunk. So it definitely had the hunk of junk vibe, but that lovable home vibe was also there.
It's not my fault. It's not my fault. Jennifer, whatever your current vehicle is, what Star Wars vehicle would you relate your current ride to?
I don't know. It's pretty practical. I don't know.
We have similar cars, Jen.
We do.
And maybe this could be your answer too. It is the Imperial Troop Transport, the Kenner toy turned Rebels and live action thing. It is wide. It's got car bloat to it. Car bloat is an issue, but it's practical. It carries things and people. It gets to where you want to go. Yeah. Show up in Andor or show up in Mandalorian. Showed up in Rebels. But yeah, it's the K-79 S-80 Imperial Troop Transport.
I like
That's the one for me.
I want it to be the battle droid cooler. Have you guys seen that in my deep dive on eBay? It's like okay. Keep talking. I'm going to find it for myself.
Okay. Ken, are you willing to say on the air what your actual car is?
Currently have a Nissan Rogue, that's very Star Wars like. It's not a rogue scoundrel of a car though. It's and we talk about car bloat. I mean, it's packaged as a mini tiny SUV that is the biggest car I've ever owned, including the Millennium Fairmont.
The whole advertising for cars is very funny. Like aliens watching car commercial would be like, what makes a good car is whether water splashes cool when you drive over a puddle. That's what we're looking for, apparently, in a good car. All the marketing of a car is all about like that power of freedom. Do you feel freedom? And a name like Rogue is so funny to give it, like Nissan Rogue. What do I want to be trapped in Los Angeles traffic in? A Nissan Rogue. Makes you feel very cool. My Toyota Yaris doesn't look like any Star Wars vehicles, but it feels like the Ghost because it's a little banged up, but you know, I think the Ghost is like the Falcon if it was owned by adults. It's a little banged up. It's a little old, but it's you know, hair is changing the oil on the Ghost. Hair is taking good
yes
care of the Ghost. So I like to think of my Toyota Yaris as like the Ghost.
Yeah.
All right, Jen, did we buy you enough time?
Yes, it's called. Sorry, I was too close to the mic. It's called It's the multi-troop transport that transports all the battle droids. But the cooler version of it is like it was. I think Pepsi made it or something. It's just really round. It's like a minivan, basically. It's like a Star Wars minivan.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at that now.
Yeah. I want that.
Wow, you could.
Nice.
You could put all your Pepsis with the cup toppers in there. Wow.
I know. I want it. For what purpose? I don't know. Going to the beach.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's good. That's a good thing.
Isn't it cool?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's amazing. All right.
I want to buy it.
Well, I'm really happy that we got a question that made us all just want to Google eBay items.
Needed.
You know, we really do need to just do more Hangout episodes. We should just do a live stream where, like, you guys all talk in the chat. We're just going to be on here. Googling eBay items every once in a while. We'll go like, look at this. Kind of not joking. That would be fun. That would be fun.
Screen share it.
Yeah, come search eBay with ForceCenter. Great question, Brandy. It's the vehicles are such an important part of Star Wars and such an important part of personality, and it's really fun to me to sort of equate them to what are the personality and the ideas and the meanings of cars here in the real world, vehicles in general. Yeah. That is it. Ken, you want to take us home?
I do. Get in our cars and drive on home. We are ForceCenter. We're found on social media at ForceCenter Pod. That includes Facebook page, ForceCenter Podcast, Instagram, YouTube. Subscribe here if you would. We're available as a podcast on a lot of spots. Just search, you'll find us. Merch available at tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter. And Fourth Wall as well. Links down below as we build that shop out. Patreon.com/ForceCenter is where you can support us directly. Help us reach our goals there. Follow me at Ken Napzok or KenNapzok.com. Jennifer.
There needs to be an Antique Roadshow, but for Star Wars collectibles. I'm sure that there probably is. Anyways, you can find me on all the social media sites at Jennifer Landa or TikTok at Jennifer Landa 1138.
There we go. Go check our old episodes of Star Wars Show and Tell. We did at the beginning of the pandemic. We needed to develop that. Jen, we should have sold that as a Star Wars Antique Roadshow. We can do that still.
Dang it.
Joseph, take us over. They can find you.
You can find me on all the social media at Joseph Scrimshaw, where I'll often be posting pictures of my Star Wars show and tell. You can also check out my website, josephscrimshaw.com, that has links to all the things I'm doing. At the end of September, a short film I worked on called The Narrator, starring the great Phil Lamar, will be playing at the Palm Springs International Comedy Festival. I'm going to see if I can be there. I'm also doing a weekly blog about creative adventures. That's called Finish Your Monsters, and got some updates on the other film stuff I'm working on there. If you're interested, you can check all that out. Links to everything on my website, josephscrimshaw.com. That is it. We have talked about complex relationship, redemption dynamics, and smart cars here on a very complicated episode of Cues of the Force. Thank you all. That is it.